I was standing in my driveway at 6 in the morning, watching my brand new ergonomic snow shovel disappear into the hands of Patricia Henshaw, the president of our Maple Ridge Homeowners Association in Burlington, Vermont. The woman had just marched across the street, past 3 other houses, to take my property right off my porch while I was warming up my car. The worst part was not even the audacity of the theft itself. It was the way she looked me dead in the eye when I called out to her, like she had every right to take whatever she wanted from my property. Patricia was in her mid-50s, with that severe haircut that screamed manager and a permanent expression that suggested the world owed her something. She wore a puffy pink jacket that made her look like an overstuffed marshmallow, and her voice carried across the frozen morning air with all the warmth of an Arctic blast. "Excuse me, that is my snow shovel," I yelled, jogging across my front yard in my work boots. The snow crunched under my feet, and my breath came out in white puffs. Patricia stopped at the edge of my driveway and turned to face me with that look. You know the one. The look that says she is about to explain something to me like I am 5 years old and particularly slow. "Well, Yuri, according to the HOA bylaws section 12.3, all residents must have their sidewalks cleared within 2 hours of snowfall cessation. My shovel broke this morning and your sidewalk is already clear. So technically, you are not using this right now, and I needed to maintain compliance with our community standards." She hefted my expensive shovel over her shoulder like she had just explained basic mathematics. I stared at her for a long moment, my jaw probably hanging open. "You cannot just take my property because you need it. That is called theft." "I prefer to call it community resource sharing," Patricia said primly. "I will return it when I am finished with my sidewalk. Unless you would prefer I write you up for refusing to cooperate with the HOA board in maintaining neighborhood standards." This was my life now. I had moved to Burlington 6 months ago for a job at the tech firm downtown, bought this nice little 2-story house in what I thought was a quiet, reasonable neighborhood, and slowly discovered that Patricia Henshaw ran Maple Ridge like her personal fiefdom. Every week brought a new notice in my mailbox. My trash cans were 2 inches too far forward on collection day. My Christmas lights were not approved colors. My car was parked 3 inches over the line into what she deemed common area, even though it was clearly part of my driveway. But this was different. This was not some petty fine or warning notice. This was actual theft of my actual property, committed in broad daylight, with multiple witnesses. Old Mr. Chen from next door was watching from his window. The young couple 3 houses down was loading their kids into their minivan and pretending not to notice, probably terrified of becoming Patricia's next target. "I want my shovel back right now," I said firmly. "You do not have permission to take it, and what you are doing is illegal." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me, Yuri Feldman? Because I can make things very difficult for you in this neighborhood, very difficult indeed. There are quite a few violations I have been lenient about on your property. That clematis vine you planted by your fence, not approved. The shade of blue on your mailbox, half a tone off from community standards. Do not push me." She turned and marched across the street toward her own house, my $150 ergonomic snow shovel bouncing on her shoulder. I stood there in the cold, anger rising in my chest like a thermometer in boiling water. This woman had been making my life miserable for months, but I had tried to be patient, tried to be reasonable, tried to just comply with her endless nitpicking. But this crossed a line. I pulled out my phone and did what I should have done months ago. I called the Burlington Police Department non-emergency line. The dispatcher who answered sounded bored until I explained that someone had just stolen my snow shovel right off my property. Can you describe the person who took it, sir? Yes, her name is Patricia Henshaw. She lives at 247 Maple Ridge Drive. She is the president of our HOA. She just walked onto my property, took my shovel, told me she was taking it, and walked back to her house with it. There was a pause. And you witnessed this yourself? Yes. I was standing right there. I asked for it back, and she refused and said she needed it. Another pause, longer this time. Sir, are you saying your neighbor borrowed your snow shovel? No, I am saying she stole it. I did not give her permission. She took it without asking. That is theft. Okay, sir. We will send an officer out to take a report. I gave them my address and stood in my driveway, watching Patricia across the street, shoveling her sidewalk with my shovel. She moved slowly, stopping frequently to rest, clearly not used to the physical labor. Her sidewalk was not even that long. She could have had the whole thing done in 15 minutes if she worked efficiently, but she was taking her time, making a show of it. 20 minutes later, a Burlington Police Department cruiser pulled up to my house. A young officer stepped out, probably in his late 20s, with dark hair and a professional expression. His name tag read Officer Morrison. Mr. Feldman, he asked as he approached. Yes, thank you for coming. I shook his hand. You reported a theft of a snow shovel. Yes. Patricia Henshaw, who lives across the street, came onto my property this morning, took my snow shovel from my porch without permission, and refused to return it when I asked. She said she needed it and that she would return it when she was done. Officer Morrison glanced across the street where Patricia was still working on her sidewalk. Is that her now, using the shovel? Yes, that is my shovel. Okay, let me go speak with her. Officer Morrison walked across the street, and I followed at a distance. Patricia looked up as we approached, and her expression shifted from concentration to annoyance. Can I help you, officer? She asked in that tone that suggested his presence was an inconvenience. Madam, I am Officer Morrison with Burlington PD. Do you mind telling me where you got that snow shovel? Patricia glanced at me, then back at the officer. From his porch. But this is a community matter, officer. I am the president of the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association, and according to our bylaws, residents must maintain their sidewalks. My shovel broke, and I needed to borrow one. Did you ask Mr. Feldman for permission to borrow his shovel? I informed him I was taking it temporarily. But did he give you permission? Patricia set her jaw. This is an HOA matter. We have rules about equipment sharing during emergencies. Officer Morrison pulled out a small notepad. Madam, I am going to need to see those bylaws because from where I am standing, if you took someone's property without their permission, that is theft regardless of what organization you belong to. This is ridiculous, Patricia said, her voice rising. I am trying to maintain our community standards. This is what I do. I keep this neighborhood looking respectable and valuable. Do you know how much work that is? Do you know how many entitled homeowners I deal with who think the rules do not apply to them? I understand, madam, but the law is clear. You cannot take someone else's property without permission. I need you to return the shovel to Mr. Feldman. Patricia's face was turning red. And what about my sidewalk? I have to have it cleared. It is in the bylaws. Madam, that is not a legal requirement I can enforce, but theft is. Please return the shovel. For a moment I thought Patricia was going to refuse. She stood there gripping my shovel, knuckles white, her breath coming in angry puffs. Then she thrust it toward me with both hands. Fine, take it. But you are going to regret this, Yuri Feldman. You are going to regret this very much. I took my shovel back. Thank you, Officer Morrison. Patricia stormed into her house and slammed the door hard enough that snow fell from her roof overhang. Officer Morrison turned to me. Do you want to press charges, Mr. Feldman? I considered it. Part of me wanted to, just to make a point. But I also had to live in this neighborhood, and I could already imagine the hell Patricia would make my life if I got her arrested. Not right now. I just wanted my property back. Understood. But I am going to file a report about this incident, and if it happens again, you should definitely press charges. What she did was theft, plain and simple. HOA president or not, she does not have the right to take your belongings. He handed me a card. That is the report number. Keep it for your records. After Officer Morrison left, I went inside and got ready for work, running late now because of the whole mess. My girlfriend Deanna was going to hear about this. She had warned me about HOAs when I was house hunting, told me to avoid them if possible, but I had thought, how bad could it be? Turns out pretty bad. The rest of the day at work, I could not stop thinking about Patricia's parting words. You are going to regret this. It felt like a threat, and knowing her, it probably was. I had seen her angry before, seen the way she targeted people who crossed her. The family 4 doors down had gotten a dozen violation notices in a single month after they complained about her at an HOA meeting. They ended up moving. When I got home that evening, there was a notice on my door. Not in my mailbox like usual, but taped directly to my front door. It was from the HOA, signed by Patricia Henshaw in her capacity as president. Notice of multiple violations, Mr. Yuri Feldman, 247 Maple Ridge Drive. This letter serves as official notice that the following violations have been documented at your property. 1. Unauthorized exterior paint color on mailbox post, violation of Section 8.22. Unapproved landscaping, clematis vine, violation of Section 10.43. Christmas decorations not removed within required time frame, violation of Section 15.14. Trash cans visible from street outside of collection hours, violation of Section 6.75. Vehicle parked in violation of driveway boundaries, violation of Section 9.3. 6. Failure to cooperate with HOA board directives, violation of Section 3.8. Each violation carries a fine of $100, for a total of $600. Additionally, you are required to remedy all violations within 10 days, or face additional daily fines of $50 per violation. Failure to comply will result in a lien being placed on your property. Sincerely, Patricia Henshaw, President, Maple Ridge HOA. I read the notice 3 times, feeling my blood pressure rising with each reading. $600. For things like my mailbox being the wrong shade of blue and my trash cans being slightly visible from the street. This was retaliation, pure and simple, because I had called the police on her. I went inside and pulled out my HOA documents, the thick packet I had barely glanced at when I bought the house. Time to actually read what I had signed up for. I spent the next 2 hours going through page after page of regulations, restrictions, and requirements. Some of it was reasonable, some of it was insane. But what really caught my attention was the section on the HOA board itself. According to the bylaws, the board consisted of a president, vice president, and 3 members at large. Elections were held annually in March. The current board had been in place for 6 years. Patricia had been president for all 6 years. Looking at the election minutes from previous years, Patricia ran unopposed every single time. I dug deeper and found something else interesting. According to Vermont state law, HOAs were bound by certain regulations. They could not impose fines without proper notice and an opportunity to appeal. They could not make rules that contradicted local, state, or federal law. And they definitely could not retaliate against homeowners for exercising their legal rights. This was good information. Information I could use. But I needed more. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with and whether other people in the neighborhood were experiencing the same problems. The next morning was Saturday. I woke up early and decided to do something I had been meaning to do for months, but never got around to actually doing. I was going to meet my neighbors. Not just the polite wave and small talk, but actually get to know them and find out if Patricia was making their lives miserable too. I started with Mr. Chen next door. He was out salting his walkway when I approached with a thermos of coffee and 2 cups. "Good morning, Mr. Chen. I am Yuri from next door. We have not properly met." Mr. Chen looked up, surprised but pleased. He was probably in his 70s, with white hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Oh yes, I have seen you. Please call me Robert." "Would you like some coffee, Robert?" We stood on his front step, drinking coffee, and I eased into the conversation. "I have been having some trouble with the HOA. Patricia Henshaw specifically. You saw what happened yesterday morning." Robert's expression darkened. "Yes, I saw. Very wrong what she did, taking your property like that. Has she done things like that to you?" Robert was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "My wife and we have lived here for 20 years. Patricia became HOA president 6 years ago. Before that, HOA was reasonable. Just basic things. Keep yard neat, no loud parties, normal rules. But Patricia, she is different. She makes up new rules, charges fines for everything. Last year, she fined us $300 because our fence had peeling paint. The fence is on our property in our backyard, cannot even see it from the street. But she came into our yard without asking, took pictures, then sent us violation notice. Did you fight it? We tried. Went to HOA meeting, asked board to review. But other board members, they just agree with whatever Patricia says. So we paid the fine. What else can we do? We are retired. We cannot afford lawyer, cannot afford to move, so we pay and try to stay out of her way. This was exactly what I suspected. Patricia was abusing her position and people were too scared or too tired to fight back. What if we all got together? Everyone she is targeting. Robert looked uncertain. I do not know. Patricia is very powerful in neighborhood. She has friends on town council, knows people. Could make things worse. I understood his hesitation, but someone had to do something. Will you at least come to a meeting if I organize one, just to talk? After a long pause, Robert nodded. Yes, I will come, my wife too. I spent the rest of the morning going door to door. Out of the 37 houses in Maple Ridge, I managed to speak with people at 22 of them. The pattern was clear. Patricia had been systematically harassing almost everyone in the neighborhood with excessive fines, arbitrary rule enforcement, and aggressive intimidation. The young couple with kids, Brandon and Melissa Turner, had been fined $500 because their children's outdoor toys were visible from the street, which Patricia claimed violated aesthetic standards. An elderly woman named Grace had been threatened with a lien because she painted her front door a shade of red that was not on the approved color list, even though 3 other houses had similar red doors that had been there before Patricia took over. A middle-aged single dad named Marcus told me Patricia had threatened to report him to child services because his teenager's music was too loud, which was completely outside her authority. Everyone had a story. Everyone was afraid, but everyone was also fed up. I organized a meeting at my house for that Sunday evening. I figured Sunday would give people the weekend to think about it without worrying about work the next day. I sent text messages to everyone I had spoken with, told them to spread the word to others who might want to come. I did not put anything in writing that could be traced back easily. No emails or social media posts, just personal invitations. Sunday evening, my living room was packed. 24 people showed up, ranging from young couples to retirees. My furniture was pushed back to make room and people sat on my couch, chairs, and floor. I had put out snacks and coffee, and the atmosphere was nervous but determined. "Thank you all for coming," I started, standing near my fireplace so everyone could see me. "I know a lot of you are taking a risk just by being here. Patricia has made it clear that she does not like it when people question her authority, but I think it is time we stop being afraid and start standing up for ourselves." There were nods and murmurs of agreement around the room. I have spent the last week researching Vermont HOA law and our specific bylaws. I found some interesting things. First, Patricia has been president for 6 years, running unopposed every election. That is not because everyone loves her. It is because no one feels safe running against her. But according to our bylaws, any homeowner in good standing can run for the board. "What does good standing mean?" Marcus asked. "No outstanding violations or unpaid fines that have gone past the appeals process." Which is tricky because Patricia hands out violations like candy. But here is the thing. Vermont law requires that before an HOA can impose a fine, they have to provide written notice, an opportunity to be heard, and a formal appeals process. Looking at all the violations Patricia has sent out, most of them do not follow proper procedure, which means most of them are not legally enforceable. The room erupted in conversation. People were pulling out their phones, checking their own violation notices, comparing notes. Grace raised her hand. "So you are saying we do not have to pay these fines?" "I am saying the fines were not issued properly according to state law, which means they can be challenged." I am not a lawyer, so I cannot give legal advice, but I think we should all collectively refuse to pay any fines that were not issued with proper procedure, and if Patricia tries to place liens on our properties, we fight it. "She will make our lives hell," someone said from the back. "She is already making our lives hell," I replied. "The question is, do we want to live like this for the next 6 years or the next 12 or the next 20? Or do we want to take back control of our own neighborhood?" Brandon spoke up. "What is your plan exactly?" "First, we need to organize. Everyone in this room should document every interaction with Patricia, every violation notice, every fine, every threat. We build a case showing a pattern of harassment and abuse of authority. Second, we file a complaint with the Vermont Attorney General's office. They have jurisdiction over HOA disputes. Third, we run our own candidates for the board in the March election. We vote Patricia out and restore some sanity to this neighborhood." "Who would run?" Melissa asked. "I will," I said. "I will run for president." "But we need 5 people total for a full board. We need a vice president and 3 members." Robert raised his hand. "I will run for member." Grace nodded. "Me too." Marcus stood up. "I will run for vice president. I am sick of this woman pushing us around." That left us needing one more board member. A woman I had not met before, probably in her 40s with short blonde hair, raised her hand. "I am Jennifer Collins. I live on Birch Lane. I will run." And just like that, we had a full slate of candidates. The energy in the room had shifted from nervous to excited. People were talking about how they would campaign, who they knew in the neighborhood, how to get the word out. Then someone knocked on my door. Hard. 3 loud bangs that silenced the entire room. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. Patricia was standing on my porch, her face red and angry even in the dim porch light. Behind her were 2 other women I recognized from HOA meetings, her usual supporters. I opened the door. "Patricia, what can I do for you?" "You are in violation of the noise ordinance," she said loudly, clearly wanting everyone inside to hear. "There are more than 10 people in your home. which constitutes a gathering that requires prior approval from the HOA board under Section 14.6. You did not request approval. Therefore, this gathering is unauthorized and you are in violation. I had read Section 14.6. That section applies to parties and events that involve amplified music or outdoor activities. This is a private gathering in my home. It does not require approval. I interpret it as requiring approval for any gathering of more than 10 people. Well, your interpretation is not consistent with the plain language of the bylaw or with Vermont law, which protects the right of homeowners to have guests in their own homes. Patricia's eyes were blazing now. You are causing trouble in this neighborhood, Mr. Feldman. Serious trouble, and you will face serious consequences. Are you threatening me again, Patricia? Because I am recording this conversation on my phone and I have 24 witnesses inside who can hear every word you are saying. That stopped her. She opened her mouth, closed it, then spun on her heel and marched back to her house, her 2 supporters trailing behind her like confused ducklings. I closed the door and turned back to my living room full of neighbors. And that is exactly why we need to do this. That woman thinks she owns us. The meeting continued for another hour. We exchanged phone numbers, created a group chat, and divided up responsibilities. Marcus volunteered to research the complaint process for the Attorney General's office. Grace knew someone who had worked with HOAs before and said she would reach out for advice. Jennifer offered to create a simple 1-page flyer we could distribute explaining the issues and introducing our slate of candidates. As people were leaving, Robert pulled me aside. This is good what you are doing, but be careful. Patricia is not going to give up power easily. She will fight dirty. Let her fight. We are not doing anything wrong. Famous last words. Monday morning, I woke up to find a bright orange sticker on my front door. It was from the city of Burlington, specifically the Code Enforcement Division. According to the notice, a complaint had been filed about my property regarding unpermitted modifications and potential zoning violations. An inspector would be coming by within 5 business days to conduct a full inspection. I called the number on the notice. A tired-sounding woman answered. Burlington Code Enforcement. Hi, my name is Yuri Feldman. I received a notice this morning about a complaint and an upcoming inspection. Can you tell me who filed the complaint and what specifically it is regarding? The complaint was filed anonymously, and it alleges unpermitted structural modifications and potential zoning violations. I have not made any structural modifications to my home. I just bought it 6 months ago. The inspector will determine that, sir. Someone will contact you to schedule the inspection. This was Patricia. It had to be, making a false complaint to the city to harass me. I called Marcus and told him what happened. She filed one against me too, he said. Got the same notice this morning. Over the next hour, I received calls and texts from 8 other people who had been at the meeting. All of them had received code enforcement notices. All of them for anonymous complaints. All scheduled for inspections. This was coordinated retaliation. Patricia was using her connections at the city to weaponize the code enforcement process against us. It was harassment, it was abuse of the system, and it was probably illegal. I called Officer Morrison, the cop who had helped me with the shovel incident. He listened to my explanation and was quiet for a moment. Mr. Feldman, what you are describing sounds like harassment, but proving it is difficult. The complaints are anonymous and the city is obligated to follow up on them. However, if you can establish a pattern and connect it back to Miss Henshaw, that could be grounds for charges. What kind of charges? Harassment, filing false reports, abusive process. But you would need evidence. Do you have any direct evidence that she filed these complaints? No, but 9 of us who attended a private meeting at my house all received identical notices the next morning. That cannot be coincidence. I agree it looks suspicious. Start documenting everything. Save all the notices, keep records of all communication. If you can build a strong enough case, bring it to us and we will investigate. After I hung up, I spent the rest of the day calling people. I wanted to make sure everyone who received a code enforcement notice was prepared for the inspection and knew their rights. The city could not just walk through your house without permission unless they had a warrant. They could inspect the exterior and anything visible from public property, but they needed consent or legal authority to come inside. The inspections happened throughout the week. Mine was on Wednesday. A middle-aged man named Phil showed up with a clipboard and a camera. He walked around the outside of my house, took some pictures, checked my windows and roof line, and looked at my yard. "Everything looks fine to me," he said after 20 minutes. "No obvious violations. Who filed the complaint?" "I do not know. It was anonymous, but I am pretty sure it was filed by someone trying to harass me." Phil sighed. "Yeah, we get that sometimes. People use us as a weapon in neighbor disputes. It is a waste of our time and your time. I will file my report saying no violations found. If you get another complaint, call me directly." He handed me his card. The same thing happened to everyone else. No violations found, clean inspections, waste of city resources. But Patricia had accomplished what she wanted, which was to intimidate us and waste our time. That weekend, Jennifer finished the flyers. They were simple and clear. At the top, it said "Time for Change in Maple Ridge." Below that was a brief explanation of the issues we had identified: excessive fines for minor issues, lack of proper procedures, inconsistent rule enforcement, and intimidation of residents. At the bottom, it introduced our slate of candidates and listed the election date in March. We printed 500 copies and spent Saturday morning distributing them to every house in the neighborhood. I took one section, Marcus took another, and we divided the rest among volunteers. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People thanked us, told us their own horror stories about Patricia, and promised to vote for us. But not everyone was happy. One of Patricia's supporters, a woman named Deborah Kane, confronted me as I was putting flyers in mailboxes on Oak Street. "You have no right to use the mailboxes," she said, pointing at me. "That is a federal offense. I am calling the postal inspector." I looked at the flyer in my hand, then back at her. "These are not going in the mailboxes. I am putting them in the newspaper boxes attached to the mailbox posts." "Completely legal." "You are causing division in this neighborhood," she continued, undeterred by being wrong. "Patricia has done nothing but work hard to maintain our property values, and you are attacking her because you do not want to follow simple rules. Deborah, she stole my snow shovel. She filed false complaints against 9 residents to harass us. She is threatening people with illegal fines. If you think that is maintaining property values, we have very different definitions. Patricia would never steal anything. You are lying. I have a police report that says otherwise." Officer Morrison witnessed the whole thing. That shut her up, but only for a moment. "Well, you are not going to win this election. Everyone knows Patricia is the best thing that ever happened to this neighborhood." I continued putting out flyers and did not bother responding. Deborah was a true believer, one of those people who had bought into Patricia's narrative completely and would not be convinced otherwise no matter how much evidence piled up. The election was scheduled for March 15th, still over a month away. We had time to campaign, but we also had to survive that month without Patricia destroying us. She had gone quiet after the code enforcement stunt, which made me nervous. Patricia was not the type to give up. She was planning something. I found out what it was a week later, when I received a certified letter from a law firm in downtown Burlington. The letter informed me that the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association was filing a lawsuit against me for defamation, harassment, and breach of contract. They were seeking $10,000 in damages plus attorney fees. I immediately called Marcus. "Did you get a certified letter from a law firm?" "Yeah, just now. I was about to call you. They are suing us, apparently, for defamation and harassment." "That is insane. We have not done anything wrong. We need a lawyer. A real one." Marcus knew an attorney who did real estate and HOA law, a woman named Sarah Mitchell. We scheduled an emergency meeting with her for the next morning. All 5 of our board candidates showed up at her office, a small suite above a coffee shop on Church Street. Sarah was probably in her 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and sharp, intelligent eyes. She read through the lawsuit carefully while we waited. Finally, she looked up. "This is what we call a SLAP suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. It is designed to intimidate you and drain your resources, not to actually win in court. Patricia knows she cannot legally stop you from running for the board or speaking out about HOA issues, so she is trying to silence you with legal threats." "Can she do that?" Grace asked. "She can file a lawsuit, but Vermont has strong anti-SLAP protections. We can file a motion to dismiss, and if successful, she will have to pay your attorney fees. The problem is, in the meantime, you have to deal with this lawsuit, which costs time and money." "How much money?" I asked, "to fight this through a motion to dismiss?" "Probably $5,000 to $7,000 per person. If it goes beyond that, more." We were all quiet. That was not an insignificant amount of money, especially for people like Robert and Grace who were on fixed incomes. "However," Sarah continued, "I think we can do better. I have dealt with abusive HOA boards before. What you have described, the retaliation, the improper fines, the harassment, that is a pattern of behavior that could support a counterclaim against Patricia personally and the HOA as an organization. If we file a counterclaim, we can turn this around on her." "What kind of counterclaim?" Marcus asked. "Harassment, abuse of authority, breach of fiduciary duty, violation of Vermont HOA statutes. We could also seek an injunction preventing the HOA from taking any enforcement action against any of you pending the resolution of the case." That sounded good, but expensive. "How much would that cost?" "I will be honest with you, this could get expensive. But if we win, Patricia and the HOA pay your fees. And I think we would win. The evidence you have described is pretty damning." We talked it over and decided to move forward. All 5 of us chipped in $2,000 each as a retainer, which was painful but necessary. Sarah got to work immediately on our response and counterclaim. Meanwhile, the election was getting closer. We held a town hall-style meeting at the community clubhouse, which was technically HOA property but available for resident use. Patricia tried to block us from using it, but Sarah sent a strongly worded letter explaining that blocking access to community facilities for election purposes would be a violation of our rights under the bylaws and state law. About 50 people showed up to the town hall. We set up chairs in rows and had our 5 candidates sit at a table in the front. Patricia was in the audience with her supporters, probably about 10 people who still backed her despite everything. I opened with a brief statement. "Thank you all for coming. We are here tonight to introduce ourselves as candidates for the HOA board and to answer your questions about our vision for the neighborhood. We believe Maple Ridge should be a place where people feel welcome, where rules are enforced fairly and consistently, and where the board serves the residents, not the other way around. Marcus spoke next about his background in project management and his ideas for improving communication between the board and residents. Jennifer talked about transparency and creating clear procedures for everything from violations to appeals to budgets. Robert shared his experience living in the neighborhood for 20 years and how much things had changed under Patricia's leadership. Grace discussed the importance of treating neighbors with respect and dignity. Then we opened it up for questions. Hands shot up all over the room. "How would you handle violations differently than the current board?" asked a man in the back. Marcus answered, "First, we would follow Vermont law and our own bylaws, which require proper notice and an appeals process. Second, we would focus enforcement on things that actually matter, like safety issues and major aesthetic problems, not nitpicking about mailbox colors. Third, we would work with residents to fix issues, not immediately jump to fines." More questions came. How would we manage the budget? What about maintenance of common areas? What about rules enforcement? We answered each one thoughtfully, emphasizing that our goal was to create a more cooperative, less adversarial relationship between the board and the residents. Then, Patricia stood up. "I have a question for Mr. Feldman." Here we go, I thought. "Yes, Patricia. Is it true that you are currently being sued by the HOA for defamation and harassment?" "Yes, you filed a lawsuit against all 5 of us. A lawsuit that our attorney says is a slap suit designed to silence us. A lawsuit we are countersuing over. Would you like to discuss why you are using HOA funds to file frivolous lawsuits against residents who are exercising their legal rights?" Patricia's face turned red. "I am protecting this neighborhood from people who want to destroy everything I have built." "You mean everything you have controlled? There is a difference. You have turned this HOA into your personal power trip and people are sick of it. That is why we are running, and that is why we are going to win." The room erupted in applause. Not everyone, but at least 2/3 of the people there. Patricia looked around, clearly shocked that so many people were against her, and stormed out of the meeting with her supporters following. After that, I knew we had momentum. The question was whether Patricia had one more trick up her sleeve. She did. 2 weeks before the election, I came home from work to find my front yard torn up. Not just a little disturbed, but completely destroyed. Someone had driven a vehicle across my lawn, leaving deep ruts in the frozen ground. My mailbox was knocked over. The small garden border I had put in last fall was crushed. I immediately called the police. A different officer came this time, Officer Linda Hayes. She walked around my property, took pictures, and asked me questions. "You have any idea who might have done this?" "I am in the middle of an HOA dispute. I am running for the board against the current president, Patricia Henshaw, and it has gotten pretty ugly. She has been retaliating against me and other candidates for weeks." "You have any evidence she did this specifically?" "No direct evidence, but the timing is suspicious." "You have security cameras?" I did not, which I was now realizing was a mistake. "No." "I will file a report for vandalism, and we will keep an eye on your street, but without witnesses or camera footage, there is not much we can do." After Officer Hayes left, I stood in my yard, looking at the damage. This had to be Patricia, but proving it was another matter entirely. I called Marcus to tell him what happened. "Stay right there," he said. "I am coming over." He arrived 15 minutes later with his laptop. "I have been thinking about security after all the harassment. I installed cameras at my place last week. Let me check something." He pulled up an app on his laptop that showed multiple camera views of his property. "My driveway camera faces the street. If someone drove past my house to get to yours, it would catch them." We scrubbed through the footage from that afternoon. At 4:37, a white pickup truck drove past Marcus's house heading toward mine. The license plate was partially visible. "Can you zoom in on that plate?" I asked. Marcus zoomed in as much as the resolution allowed. The first three characters were clear enough. VPH. I need to see if Patricia owns a white pickup truck. The next morning, I drove past Patricia's house slowly. In her driveway was a white pickup truck with a license plate that started with VPH. I took a picture and called Officer Hayes. She came back out, looked at the photo, looked at the video from Marcus's camera, and nodded slowly. "That is enough for me to have a conversation with Miss Henshaw. Let me follow up on this." An hour later, Officer Hayes called me back. "Mr. Feldman, I spoke with Miss Henshaw. She denies driving on your property, but she did admit that her truck was driven yesterday afternoon. She claims she lent it to her nephew, who was helping her move some furniture." I asked for the nephew's contact information to verify the story, and she became very defensive and told me I was harassing her. Without more evidence, I cannot charge her with the vandalism, but I did warn her that we are investigating and that any further incidents would be taken very seriously. It was not an arrest, but at least Patricia knew we had evidence connecting her truck to the vandalism. Maybe that would make her think twice about escalating further. The election was on March 15th, a Tuesday evening. Voting took place at the clubhouse from 6 to 8 in the evening. According to the bylaws, any homeowner in good standing could vote, 1 vote per property. There were 37 properties in Maple Ridge, which meant 37 possible votes. Sarah had helped us challenge several of the outstanding fines Patricia had issued, getting most of them dismissed on procedural grounds. That meant everyone who wanted to vote could vote, including those Patricia had tried to intimidate with bogus fines. The atmosphere at the clubhouse was tense. Patricia had set up a table with her own slate of candidates, though she struggled to find people willing to run with her. She ended up with only 3 people, including herself, which meant 2 board positions would be unfilled if her slate won. I watched as neighbors came in to vote. The process was simple. Take a ballot, check off up to 5 candidates for the 5 board positions, put the ballot in the box. An independent volunteer from a management company that specialized in HOA elections was overseeing the process to ensure fairness. At 8 sharp, voting closed. The volunteer, a professional woman named Michelle, emptied the ballot box onto a table and began counting. Patricia hovered nearby, watching like a hawk. I stayed back, trying not to seem too anxious even though my heart was pounding. It took about 20 minutes to count all the ballots. 34 people had voted out of 37 possible. Michelle wrote down the results on a piece of paper, double-checked her math, then announced the results. For the position of president, Yuri Feldman received 28 votes. Patricia Henshaw received 6 votes. Yuri Feldman is elected president. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. 28 votes. That was an overwhelming victory, Michelle continued. For vice president, Marcus Turner received 27 votes. David Stevenson received 5 votes. Marcus Turner is elected vice president. Marcus pumped his fist. Patricia's face was getting redder by the second. For the 3 board member positions, the winners are Robert Chen with 26 votes, Grace Hamilton with 25 votes, and Jennifer Collins with 24 votes. We had won all 5 positions. A clean sweep. Patricia had been voted out completely. The small crowd of residents who had stayed for the results broke into applause. People came up to congratulate us, shake our hands, thank us. Patricia stood frozen for a moment, then gathered her things and left without a word. Deborah came up to me, looking uncomfortable. "I hope you will be fair," she said. "That is all we have ever wanted," I replied. "Fairness." Our first board meeting was scheduled for the following week. According to the bylaws, the outgoing board had to provide all financial records, documents, and HOA property to the new board within 7 days of the election. 7 days came and went. No records. I called Patricia. She did not answer. I left a voicemail. No response. I sent a certified letter to her address. She refused delivery. Sarah sent a formal demand letter on our behalf. Still nothing. She is in breach of her fiduciary duty, Sarah explained. As the outgoing president, she is legally required to turn over all HOA materials. If she does not, we can get a court order. We filed a motion for an emergency court order compelling Patricia to turn over the HOA records. The hearing was scheduled for the following week in Chittenden Superior Court. On the day of the hearing, all 5 of us new board members showed up along with Sarah. Patricia was there with the attorney who had filed the slap suit, a slick-looking guy named Richard Preston. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Martha Reynolds, read through the motion quickly. Miss Henshaw, you are the outgoing president of the Maple Ridge HOA. Yes, Your Honor. And you have not turned over the association's records to the new board. Your Honor, I question the legitimacy of the election. There were irregularities that need to be investigated before I can in good conscience turn over sensitive financial information to people who may not have been properly elected. Judge Reynolds looked skeptical. What irregularities specifically? Patricia's attorney jumped in. Your Honor, we believe there were issues with ballot access, improper campaigning, and possible election fraud. We are requesting the court order a new election. Do you have any evidence of these allegations? We are still gathering evidence, Your Honor. Judge Reynolds was clearly not impressed. So you are asking me to delay the transfer of authority based on allegations you have not substantiated. Meanwhile, the HOA cannot function because the outgoing board refuses to provide the new board with the necessary materials to do their job. Does that sum it up? Richard Preston looked uncomfortable. Your Honor, my client has concerns about. Your client lost an election, Judge Reynolds interrupted. Badly, from what I can see in these documents. 28-6 is not exactly close. Unless you can provide concrete evidence of election fraud right now, I am going to order the immediate turnover of all HOA materials. Your Honor, we need time to. No, you have had 2 weeks. The election was proper, it was witnessed by an independent party, and the results are clear. Miss Henshaw, you are ordered to turn over all HOA documents, financial records, keys, and property to the new board within 48 hours. If you fail to comply, you will be held in contempt of court. Am I clear? Patricia's face was like stone. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Next, I want to address this lawsuit that the HOA filed against the new board members. Mr. Preston, are you still pursuing that case? Yes, Your Honor, we believe. You believe wrong. I have reviewed the anti-slap motion filed by Ms. Mitchell, and I am granting it. The lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice, and the HOA is ordered to pay the defendant's attorney fees. The amount will be determined after Ms. Mitchell submits her fee statement. This lawsuit was clearly designed to intimidate residents from participating in their own HOA governance, and I will not allow my court to be used for that purpose. I had to stop myself from smiling. This was better than I could have hoped for, but Judge Reynolds was not done. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the Vermont Attorney General's office for investigation into potential abuse of HOA authority. Miss Henshaw, you should expect to hear from them. That was when Patricia lost it. She stood up, her voice rising. This is ridiculous. I have dedicated 6 years of my life to that neighborhood. I have worked tirelessly to maintain property values and community standards. And this is how I am repaid. with accusations and investigations. These people have no idea what it takes to run an HOA. They will run it into the ground within a year. Miss Henshaw, sit down, Judge Reynolds said firmly. I will not sit down. This is a miscarriage of justice. You are punishing me for doing my job. Miss Henshaw, sit down now or I will have the bailiff remove you from my courtroom. Patricia finally sat, but she was shaking with rage. The hearing was adjourned and we left the courthouse victorious. Patricia had to turn over everything within 48 hours. The lawsuit was dismissed, and she was being investigated by the state. 2 days later, Patricia showed up at my house with 3 boxes. She dropped them on my porch without a word and left. Inside were bank statements, violation records, meeting minutes, bylaws, keys to the clubhouse and pool area, and the HOA's laptop. Everything we needed to take over. That evening, our new board had its first official meeting in my living room since we did not have access to the clubhouse yet. We went through the financial records first. What we found was disturbing. The HOA had collected over $40,000 in fines over the past 2 years. But the bank statements showed only $12,000 in the HOA account. Where did the rest go? We dug deeper into the records. There were expenses listed for things like landscaping, maintenance, and legal fees, but many of them had no supporting documentation. No invoices, no receipts, no contracts, just entries that said things like paid landscaping or legal consultation. Marcus pulled out his laptop and started building a spreadsheet. We need to track every dollar in and every dollar out. If money is missing, we need to know exactly how much and where it should have gone. We worked until midnight going through 2 years of financial records. By the end, the picture was clear. Patricia had been embezzling HOA funds, not huge amounts at any one time, but consistent. A few hundred here for a landscaping expense that never happened. 1,000 there for legal fees that were not supported by any bills from attorneys. Over 2 years, it added up to about $18,000. We have to report this, Jennifer said. This is theft. Agreed, I said. We are calling the police in the morning. The next day, I called the Burlington Police Department and asked to speak with a detective about suspected embezzlement. They sent Detective Mark Rodriguez, a serious man in his early 40s who took copious notes as we walked him through what we had found. You are saying the former HOA president embezzled approximately $18,000 over 2 years, he asked. That is what the records indicate. We have documented expenses with no supporting invoices, payments that were allegedly made to vendors who have no record of receiving them, and missing funds that should be in the HOA account but are not. Detective Rodriguez examined the records we had compiled. This is good work, very thorough. I am going to need to take these as evidence and start an investigation. Do you have copies? Yes, we made copies of everything. Good. I will also need statements from all of you. This is going to take some time, but if what you are showing me holds up, we are looking at felony embezzlement charges. Over the next 2 months, Detective Rodriguez conducted his investigation. He interviewed Patricia, who denied everything and claimed the records were inaccurate. He interviewed vendors who confirmed they had not been paid the amounts listed in the HOA records. He subpoenaed Patricia's personal bank accounts and found several deposits that corresponded with the missing HOA funds. The evidence was overwhelming. In May, Patricia Henshaw was arrested and charged with felony embezzlement, theft by fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. The arrest happened early in the morning. I heard about it from Robert, who had seen the police at Patricia's house. The criminal case moved slowly through the system, as these things do. Patricia hired a defense attorney and pleaded not guilty. But the evidence was strong, and eventually her attorney advised her to take a plea deal. In September, 9 months after she stole my snow shovel, Patricia appeared in Chittenden Superior Court and pleaded guilty to embezzlement. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison, with 1 year suspended, and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA plus fines and court costs. She would serve 1 year in prison, followed by probation. I attended the sentencing hearing along with several other members of the new HOA board. Patricia looked smaller somehow, diminished. The angry, intimidating woman who had terrorized our neighborhood was gone, replaced by someone who looked tired and defeated. When Judge Reynolds asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Patricia stood and faced us. I want to say that I never meant for things to go this far. I truly believed I was doing what was best for the neighborhood. I worked hard to maintain standards and keep property values high. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what was important. I became more concerned with control than with serving the people I was supposed to help. And when I started having financial problems of my own, I made choices I deeply regret. I am sorry for what I did. I am sorry for the harm I caused, and I accept responsibility for my actions. It was probably the most honest thing I had ever heard her say. After the sentencing, we walked out of the courthouse into bright autumn sunshine. Marcus turned to me. "It is really over." "Yeah," I said. "It is really over." Life in Maple Ridge changed dramatically after Patricia was gone. Our new board implemented policies focused on cooperation rather than intimidation. We revised the bylaws to include clear procedures for violations, appeals, and fines. We cut the fine amounts in half and focused enforcement on actual problems rather than petty aesthetic issues. We opened up board meetings to all residents and published detailed financial reports every quarter. Property values did not collapse, as Patricia had predicted. In fact, they went up slightly, probably because people actually wanted to live in a neighborhood that was not run by a tyrant. The $18,000 Patricia was ordered to pay back came in slowly over time as she made restitution payments. We used the money to improve the common areas, fix the clubhouse, and build up a reserve fund for future maintenance. I served as HOA president for 2 years, then stepped down to let someone else have a turn. Marcus took over, and he was great at it. The board continued to function well, with healthy turnover and no one person dominating. As for Patricia, she served her year in prison and was released on probation. I heard she moved to another state to live with her sister. I never saw her again. The whole experience taught me some valuable lessons. HOAs are not inherently evil, but they can be dangerous when run by people who care more about power than service. Standing up to bullies is hard, but necessary. And sometimes, stealing someone's snow shovel on a cold February morning can be the first step in unraveling an entire criminal enterprise. I still have that snow shovel, by the way. It is in my garage, and every time I use it, I remember that cold morning when Patricia Henshaw made the mistake of thinking she could take whatever she wanted without consequences. She learned the hard way that theft is theft, even in winter, and even when you are the HOA president. The neighborhood is peaceful now. People chat on their front porches in the summer. Kids play in the street without fear that someone will complain about the noise. We have an annual block party that everyone actually enjoys. The HOA still exists, and we still have rules, but they are reasonable rules enforced in reasonable ways. And me? I am just a guy who wanted to live peacefully in a nice house in Burlington, Vermont. I never wanted to be HOA president, never wanted to fight a legal battle, and definitely never wanted to help send someone to prison. But when the situation demanded it, I stood up. We all did, and we made our neighborhood better because of it. Sometimes all it takes to change everything is refusing to let someone steal your snow shovel and get away with it. Because once you start standing up for yourself in small ways, it becomes easier to stand up for yourself in big ways. And when you stand up for yourself, you often end up standing up for everyone else who is too scared or too tired to fight. That is worth more than any snow shovel, no matter how ergonomic.